Hello. Another anti-coach video. This one's a little simpler than the first one I'm going to put up. I kind of touched on this in a couple, in the last video and in a couple other videos. The way I talk to children is generally not considered okay by most other coaches, teachers, and a good 30% of parents. I refuse to be patronizing. I refuse to treat an 8-year-old like a baby. Kids are not stupid. They are ignorant. And if you don't treat them and talk to them like adults, they don't grow up to be adults. They need the proper... They don't need to be steered. They need to be given information. In my eyes, fairly unfiltered information. Once you start getting in the process of deciding what to filter and what not to filter, you can get into a big, complicated mess with mistruths and lies being mixed in with things. Anyway, that's not really the issue. The issue is really the tone and the volume. There are several coaches I work with on a regular basis that have this very patronizing, childlike tone, like they're speaking to a 3-year-old idiot when they talk to... Basically, there's one in particular that does it talking to all her students, even up to 18 years old, and I don't get it. Then she turns around and talks to one of her coworkers or a parent, and she changes her tone. Like I don't really understand why you would adopt a different way of speaking in a different tone. Just because you're teaching someone something. This is someone at the very least, needs to teach adults more, so you understand that you don't have to adopt a coach persona, you don't have to adopt a teacher persona, you don't need to adopt a different way of speaking, a different way of talking to people, just because they're kids. And as I said in a few of my other videos, obviously with a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, there's topics you're not going to breach. There's topics you're not going to allow them to bring up. There's certain words and certain language you're going to miss, but the tone doesn't have to become patronizing. And I have quite a few parents and coaches who are shocked when 4-, 5-, and 6-year-olds actually identify with me and like me and enjoy getting lessons from me because they see the way I talk to them as harsh, as terse, as... well, harsh and terse, and they consider me way too matter-of-fact in the way I deal with them to ever get through to them, and they're completely wrong. I have absolutely no problem getting through to different ages. I will say for the first 2 or 3 years I coached, I wouldn't coach anyone under the year of 14. I had a rule that I wouldn't teach young kids, and I had a few coaches who kind of saw how stupid that was without telling me and gradually worked me down in age, and now I don't, and it's kind of because I started with the attitude that you have to talk to a 6-year-old differently, you have to teach them differently than you teach a 14-year-old, than you teach a 25-year-old, and it turns out it's not actually the case. That there may be differences, but they're very minor, very insignificant differences, very superficial differences that don't make much of an overall effect on your demeanor during a lesson, your language, your tone, your volume, your delivery. There's a couple, and I've tried to decide whether or not this coach who talks patronizingly to all of her students, and by the way, that she would never describe it as that, and I've had a couple parents come and tell me, compliment her on her attitude during lessons because they really approve of the very soft and delicate way that she approaches information sharing to all of her students. So if you're looking to impress a few parents and get kids to think you're a nice, sweet person, wonderful. But if you're actually trying to teach them to skate and improve their skating, not so wonderful. There are more efficient, more direct, more blunt ways to share data, to share information, to correct mistakes, or in not only in technique but in thinking, in attitude, in behavior, than to be I can't think of another word other than patronizing. I should probably talk to these people and get them to give me another word. There's another coach I know who I work with who isn't really that way with her competitive skaters or star skaters, even when you go very young in age, as soon as people start private lessons with her, she kind of changes the way she speaks. But the last couple of years, I started working on can skate sessions with her, and she talks completely differently to can skate kids. Again, there's this almost patronizing attitude, like you're trying to encourage a 3-year-old to put her shoes on to go outside to play when she doesn't want to, or something. Like there's this real the words I would use are smarmy, or it's very fake. It's very fake. It's not a manner of speaking that anybody has other than speaking to very young kids. I have a lot of respect for. I have run into a few coaches here and there who do speak to all levels of skaters that they teach with basically the same normal voice, the same voice mannerisms, the same speech mannerisms that they teach that they have with everyone else outside of coaching. And I have a fairly great respect for them. And then if they have a softer tone and a nicer tone and a more friendly, listener-friendly tone to them, but they have that with everyone across the board, I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. It's when they start to develop different speech mannerisms depending on the session they're on, the age they're on. I find that disingenuous and dishonest and ineffective, which is probably the worst crime. I don't think if you have... I know I've had a few female coaches over the years. This hasn't happened recently, but there's been at least 3 or 4 can skate sessions over the years where I've had female coaches on the ice tell me that they couldn't get a little boy or a little girl who was a little hyper, a little out of control, to listen to them and to do what they want. And yet when that person comes to my group and I teach them, I have had no problem getting them to listen to me. Because there's an air of authority, an air of command in my voice, an air of... what's a better word for it? Oh, those are 2 good words for it. Authority and command that I give, that the coaches who talk, cajole kids, can't do. Now, the flip side of that, obviously, is if you have a 5-year-old girl who's afraid of men, and I come up and start being, succinct and exacting with what I expect of them. Hey, you need to stand up, put your knee on the ice, put your hands on your knee, and push up. Do it now. Go. They're probably going to burst into tears and have to be carried off the ice. That generally doesn't happen. Obviously, I have a slight adjustment with my tone as I go up, but I definitely have young can skaters that do not... for all the can skaters that respond to me better because I'm more succinct, more exact, more deliberate, my delivery is more honest and adult with them, and they really appreciate and respond to that, there's probably one that does not. This is one of the reasons why I like to have, and why it's usually a good idea to have a couple different coaches with very different teaching methods working the same sessions. So the kids that cry in front of me and won't do anything in front of me, and I had 2 this year, 2 sisters. When they go to the other 2 groups in can skate, at least they're going to get something done. They're going to be able to cajole them off the ice and encourage them to walk around a little bit and stop crying. Now, I don't go near them and try to talk to them because they just sit and cry most of the time in my group. But they're essentially losing 1/3 of their group because of my approach. And like I said, there are other groups, and have been other groups over the years, where kids do not respond to the, oh, how are you today? Do you think you can stand up? Let's try to stand up together. That kind of... I can't even do it because it nauseates me so much. But that kind of... essentially baby talk is what I call it. It's treating them like they're, mentally incapable toddlers. And there's definitely no reason to have that past the age of 7 or 8. Now, 1/3 of parents completely agree with me and completely follow kind of the same philosophy, and parents tend to talk to their kids in a more adult way anyway. They kind of realize, I hope, subconsciously maybe, that they're largely responsible for the maturing and the understanding of how the world works of their kids. But when they take them to a coach for an hour a week or 2 hours a week, about 1/3 of them disconnect and think, no, I want you to treat my kid like they're a precious little baby. and never say anything or do anything or that could possibly upset them in any way, which is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous attitude. When they get out in the real world, things are going to happen that they can't control and they can't anticipate, and they're going to have to. Their kids should learn how to deal with that at a fairly young age. Anyway, so that's my. I guess that's not totally an anti-coach thing, but if you poll 100 coaches on how you should talk to kids and get videos of them, you're going to have maybe. Trying to think in the numbers that I have locally, I've worked with maybe 50 coaches on can skate sessions, and I would say 30 of the 50 are extremely patronizing to their skaters, and the other 10 to 15 of them are selectively patronizing to their skaters, and there's really only, I've probably only met 2 or 3 kids that, 2 or 3 coaches that kind of maintain the same kind of speech mannerisms with their skaters as they have with adults. Now, one of the arguments I would get from coaches, just as a final point, is that, and probably child therapists and parents and a few other people, is that if you're not getting through to a kid, you should be applying a different tone. And I don't argue with that at all. That's completely true. If I'm not reaching a kid with one kind of tone, one kind of behavior, one kind of mannerism, speech mannerisms, you raise your voice, you lower your voice, you slow down your cadence, you speed up your cadence, there's a variety of different tools you use to try to get them to respond better to your speech. But I totally accept that. I'm talking about your general default speech mannerisms. Are they designed to keep everybody soothed and pacified and controlled, or are they designed to assist in the sharing of information in a more efficient way? And then you get into a philosophy difference. We as coaches, what are we supposed to be doing? Are we supposed to be, are we a daycare, or we're just trying to keep these kids under control, or are we trying to pass on some kind of skating wisdom, some kind of skating knowledge? And that is very much an individual parent choice, an individual skater choice, an individual coaching choice, how you wish to approach your interaction with your pupils. I think that's it. Bye.